Hello everyone, this is Jason Wooding, the Relic Gamer, and today I wanted to talk to you all about the Amico disc. So you're probably wondering how exactly it works. Well, we all know that it has the 64 points of contact. But what does that mean? How is it similar to current generation controllers? I mean, and I'm talking about the Xbox One, the PS4 or PS5, any of those type of controllers, the Series X. How are they similar and not similar? Well, to understand what it's most similar to is going back 30 plus years ago when these guys came out and they had a D-pad. But it's not like a D-pad, is it? Because it's a disc and it rotates, that you can pivot it all the way around. But here's how it's similar. Here is the membrane to an NES controller. Now I have this controller apart, so it's kind of hard to show you without it all falling apart, but I just took it apart for this video. See if I can get it together. But as you know, this controller here, and it has these little contact pads, and these little membranes here, this little rubber piece has this conductive material in the middle there. And if any of you have ever worked on these, you know that the part that typically fails on these controllers is this little piece here. And rarely I've ever had any issues with the circuit board themselves. So how is the Amico disc like that? Well, this is what I'm going to show you. There's this little rubber ring on here. That is conductive. And it basically, as it's rotating, as you're tipping that disc around, it has those 64 points of contact. And the other thing that's interesting about it is that, so you got to think of it, it's a round in shape, a ring that goes all the way around there. And it's round. And as you press it down, it kind of flattens out. And what that does is it takes that sharp angle, and then when you press it down, it can meet up and touch other contacts, which gives the controller a unique ability to do different things when you press harder on the controller. It might help you to speed up on a game with racing. Or harder you push, the more contacts it makes, and it does a different function than just pushing up and down like a D-pad. But how's that fair against what we've been using for a long time now, the current adopted technology? Well, with the analog stick, it works great when it's working. As we know, a lot of these Joy-Cons are having issues with the stick having drift issues, which basically, if you're not familiar with it, it's when you put the stick back, when it strings back to center, just a little bit of it is off enough to where if you're using, let's say you're in a first-person shooter and you've got your gun and you're trying to keep it aimed, and then you let your finger off the thumb, it just starts drifting away. Or if you're steering a car and you're using the stick and then you take your finger off the stick and you're trying to drive straight, the car will start veering off. And that's been a common issue. And it's not just the Joy-Con. I actually had a couple of Xbox One controllers do that. And I've had an Elite controller do it months after I bought it. And I wish I'd taken it back but sooner. But when I bought it, I actually hadn't got a chance to use it because I was busy working for a few months. And by the time I got back to using that controller, the warranty was already up on it. So that was a little disheartening. But anyway, it's a common problem. Well, I'm pretty certain that this isn't going to have that issue with the drifting. I could be wrong. I mean, it's possible, but it's completely different technology. What do we know about the D-pad, though? How many of you have had one fail? Make a comment down below. I actually would love to know. I've never actually had a D-pad fail. The only thing I've actually had fail is usually like an A-B button. One of those, the membrane actually gets a tear in it from just overuse. Because you have to understand, this little membrane is actually what causes it to spring the button back. And if it wears out, the button doesn't go back up. That's usually all it is. And I'll add this. When this breaks on one of my controllers, you can go on eBay, maybe even Amazon, but I've seen it on eBay. You can order a whole kit for one controller. And sometimes they sell them in a pack of 2. But one set I think is around $10. It's not too expensive. And if you have a little bit of skill at taking things apart, putting them back together, this doesn't take very long. You take it apart, pop all these things back in, put all the buttons back in place. If you're careful, you don't even take the buttons out. You just pull these pieces out and you just throw the old ones away. You put the new ones in and you're back in business. Now, how does this compare to current technology? Probably wondering. Well, here is one of my old Xbox One controllers. This is one of the boards. Now, if this stick fails, which I've had them fail, and I've went in the process of replacing one of them, because you can order just this part right here. You can buy them in a 2-pack. But here's what happens. You got to unsolder all the little studs on there and get that thing to pop off. It's not very easy. It's very technical, and there is actually little diodes down inside there that are really close to the stud. So if you get that thing too hot, those things will just pop off. And then this thing, if you don't get the part back on right or whatever, this whole thing is done. So it's a tedious job. Some people don't do that. They opt to just replace this whole board, which is an option, but it's also about $30. And I don't know if any of you have taken an Xbox One controller apart, but it's very complicated. You have to be very careful on how all the little buttons and stuff, the triggers, all that have to go back together. And they have 2 boards in there. They all both have to come back together just right. It's not an easy task, especially for someone who's not used to repairing these things. And probably, thankfully, I haven't had to deal with it yet, but probably even worse with one of these. These are much smaller. So most people don't go through all that work to get rid of, that part and put a new one in. They just go and get a new part, a new controller. And that's often what I've done because I've had a few go bad on me. The only one I considered repairing was my Elite controller, and I eventually just gave up. It had other issues beside just the analog stick. It had charging port issues too, but that's for a different story. Different topic, but these are kind of notorious for failing, and they may sell these by themselves. I'm not really sure. There is some really nice aftermarket options I've heard people say that are much better than the OEM, stock Joy-Con. But it is a known problem. If anybody has been in the gaming world for a while, they know about this problem. So take that into mind. What do you think? One of these, maybe if you have to buy a 2-pack, it's $70, or you get one for $35. I don't know if they sell them by themselves. I'll have to look that up. If you know, make a comment down below and tell me. But here we go. This is the only part that's going to really fail because it just rubs against that circuit board with the same little contacts. And if we go by what we already know about D-pads and the buttons that we've been using, typically even the Xbox controllers and PlayStation controllers, the buttons are rarely the problem. It's usually the analog stick. The D-pad doesn't really fail on old NES controllers, if we're going to talk about that. So if this is the one part that makes that contact. Let's say this little, let me get up close. Let's say that little ring there wears out. It flattens out or gets a worn edge and doesn't make the contact the same way over time. What is it going to cost to repair that? Well, you don't have to unsolder anything. That's the beauty of it. This just pops in there. That's kind of a nice feeling, knowing that you could take the controller apart, and if you ordered this part, you could just replace it pretty easily. Maybe it's a $10 part. I don't know. What do you guys think? You tell me. So I think that's it. That's about all I have to say. That's what I wanted to get off my chest about. I wanted to tell you guys all about this, the technology. Some of you may have already known about that. I know a few people in Texas got the same little disc as a gift from Tommy. When he told me about it, I thought, wow, that's neat. I've never, almost made me think, why isn't anybody else doing that, you know? And there may be other reasons why it doesn't work with as a replacement for the analog stick, but you never know. It could be, and it would be more reliable, I would think, but maybe I'm wrong. You guys tell me down below what you think. Do you think that this technology is more bulletproof than an analog stick? Do you think that this could be a replacement to the analog stick? Maybe if it was made smaller or it had some different shape to it and it had a stick on there instead of this little disc. Do you think that the disc itself, its idea and concept, the way it's shaped, might work for you? I mean, obviously not everyone's gotten to play with this, but could it be done if it was a controller with two of them? I don't know. Anyway, something to think about, something to stew on until the Amico comes out. But I thought I'd share that with you, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, and we'll go from there. Have a good one.